Today we are into our last part of 3 of learning how the Iroquois Confederacy was structured. So on your page, either on your visual journal or with your items within your diorama, you should have, now we're on to the third thing, so you should have an image of Hiawatha, you should have the 5 nations somehow shown, and then now we're on to the Tree of Peace. Okay, so this also has to be your last symbol thing that is drawn. Okay. All right, so we have finished this. Now we are on to this part. Okay. So we have learned that the Peacemaker was, this picture's in your textbook if you might recognize it. The Peacemaker and Hiawatha did an amazing thing. They came to basically unite the nations together. So the Peacemaker came to North American forest lands to unite the nations of the Mohawk, Onondaga, Oneida, Cuyuna, and the Seneca, who had been at war for many years. So we already know this. He believed in peace and reason. Okay, the 5 nations, they created the Great Law of Peace. Each nation, this is pretty interesting, they kept their own territory or land, they kept their own language, and they kept their own culture. So basically, they were just united so that they know that they're not going to be at war anymore with each other. Okay, so the Iroquois, we're going to watch a couple videos. Okay, the Iroquois actually did not like to be called Iroquois. They preferred to be called the Haudenosaunee. So here is how we say this quickly. You can practice it. It's pretty short.
The correct pronunciation of this word is Haudenosaunee. Now it's your turn to give it a try. Ready? Haudenosaunee. Do you know
Let's try
this
again.
word is? Haudenosaunee.
Haudenosaunee.
Now it's your turn to give it a try. Ready? Haudenosaunee.
Haudenosaunee.
Do you know what
One more
this
time.
word is? Haudenosaunee.
Haudenosaunee.
Now it's your turn to give it a try. Ready? Haudenosaunee. Do you know how to pronounce this word right here?
Okay, cool.
If not, click here to find out, and don't forget
right.
to subscribe for more
We're done
amazing
with that
videos.
one. Close. Okay, very good. Okay, so this part, on your page, you could write Haudenosaunee somewhere on your page, or if you don't have room on this page, even just at the bottom somewhere, if you need to fit it on somewhere else to another page, I'd like you to include. This is not for marks, but this is just kind of like a cool thing. In this video, we're going to watch this, and I want you to think about this. What does Haudenosaunee mean, and what does the name represent? Okay, so somewhere on your page, get ready to write this down. We're just going to do this as the class, though, so part is not for marks.
The Native Americans that live here in the upper part of New York State, we heard already that sometimes people call us
Lower Canada.
Iroquois or Iroquois. You've all heard that word before, right? All right, yeah, I'm sure you have. So that name, though, comes to us from another group of people that came across the ocean starting about 400 years ago. About 400 years ago, people started coming from other countries, like the Netherlands. We call them Dutch people. They came from England, they came from Spain, they came from Sweden. But around here, the people that first came to this area, they came from France. And when those French people came across the ocean 400 years ago, you might remember this guy. His name was Samuel de Champlain. We heard that name before? Yeah. Well, when Sam came across
He's more
the ocean,
famous in
he
the
made
US.
friends with some other Native Americans. And these Native Americans spoke a completely different kind of language than the people that lived here. Usually we call them Algonquin or Algonquian. You've heard that word, haven't you? Yeah, okay. Look at all
Maybe
these
not,
words
again,
together.
more American.
So these Algonquian-speaking peoples, they didn't like the people that lived around here very much. And in their languages, they called us Iroquois. Iroquois. And that word in their language translates into English as real snakes. Real snakes or real adders, because we didn't get along with them very well. So they called us by that bad name. They called us real snakes. Well, when Sam Champlain came across the ocean and he made friends with those Algonquian-speaking peoples, he heard that word, Iroquois, and that's what he started to call us. Except when he wrote it down, he spelled it with an I, and he pronounced it Iroquois. Anyone here take French? If you see a word in French that ends in Q-U-O-I-S, you would pronounce it
Qua.
and that's what the French people call this, Iroquois. If you went up to Montreal right now, that's how they still say that word. So Iroquois
Not
kind of
Iroquois.
sounds like Iroquois, which is where that word originally comes from. Why people around here say Iroquois, I have no idea. You're actually saying it wrong. And you're saying a word wrong that was a mispronunciation of another word that they were saying wrong, and it was a bad name to call us in the first place. You're literally making like 3 mistakes in one word.
Which shows why they don't like
Now,
to be called
the
that,
word
right?
that we have for ourselves in our own languages is not Iroquois or Iroquois. Like I said, that's what the French people called us. In our own languages, we call ourselves Haudenosaunee. Haudenosaunee. Have you all heard that word before? All right, excellent. Haudenosaunee is the name that we were given a long time ago when 5 different tribes joined together to live in peace with one another. And I'm sure you've heard the names of the 5 tribes. There was the Mohawk, who lived right around here where we are today. There was also the Oneida.
So they're in New York.
The Onondaga, where I come from. That is the type of Native American I am. There was also the Cayuga, and there was the Seneca, which is where my dad comes from. So those were the original 5 tribes that joined together. Later, we were joined by another tribe.
I'll learn about that today too.
Tuscarora. So today we have 6 tribes or 6 nations that are joined together. And all joined together, we call ourselves Haudenosaunee. So in English, when we translate that word means the people like me, the people who are building the long house. You got it.
Nice.
People who are building the long house. Now, in your social studies book, or maybe things that you read with your teacher, it might have told you that it means people of the long house. Have you heard that phrase before?
Maybe not quite.
Yeah, that's a phrase that we hear all the time. And that is kind of correct. But more correct is that it means people building the long house, because that word is much more about joining together than
There
it is
you go.
about house.
That's what this name
so
represents.
when we say we are Haudenosaunee, we really mean we are joining together.
So the people joining together. Okay. Great. Okay, so are we okay for this part? What does Haudenosaunee mean? It means not the people of the longhouse, but the people building the longhouse, which represents how they are coming together. So just write that down, not for marks, but just really kind of cool stuff to know. Okay, I don't want to be in this anymore. Okay, there we go. Okay, yeah. Okay, so where do the Iroquois or Haudenosaunee live? Okay, so most of them live in northeastern United States or southeastern Canada. So you're going to see on this little map. Oops, what am I doing? Yeah, so we see here on the map, right? This is the area right here. So it's like the very base of Canada into Quebec, right? This is the province of Quebec. No, sorry, this is Ontario, and then this is Quebec. So it's kind of in like, yeah, both of those different parts. And they were speaking kind of from New York, which is closer to Quebec. Okay, and then this is what the map looks like of the 5 nations. Okay, so the Seneca were the keepers of the western door, and the Mohawk were the keepers of the eastern door. So on your page also that you have, we're going to just write this in. So somehow where you put Seneca, make a little note, keepers of the western door. And then on the east side, the Mohawk were the keepers of the eastern door. What were the responsibilities of the gatekeepers? Okay, this is going to be, well, we actually learned about this from before. We would be having a class discussion about this right now if we were in class. So maybe let's do this. How about underneath of this, you guys can post your responses to what the responsibilities of the gatekeeper were. And I'll give some participation points for those of you who kind of hop on this nice and quickly. What were the responsibilities of the gatekeepers? Okay, so when we see that, I'll just say it's right on our post, and then we can just add this into your book. Okay, so then there is this thing that's called the Great Law of Peace. Now we're getting more into today here, the actual symbol, which you have to draw or make a sculpture of, which is this tree. So the Peacemaker gathered all of the nations under the tree of peace and recited the great law of peace that they were then to live by. And they did something really cool. They buried their weapons underneath of this tree. They all did that. They put all their weapons. There wouldn't just be just one there. There'd be many, many of them there. 5 in particular. And this was super important because this was the representation of the Confederacy of the 5 nations, boom, being created. That's it. And then, so eventually, like we heard in the video, this other nation called the Tuscarora joined the Iroquois Confederacy, and then they were finally complete because they're always welcoming new nations. So they had joined. The Tuscarora we don't really need too much about this, but they were the last ones to join. And they joined because they were feeling a bit threatened that their land was going to be taken over. And they just wanted to be kind of in a solidarity, like solid as a group with the other nations. So, and of course they were welcome in. All right, we're going to go back to this video because there's a really good part in here.
3 nations had now agreed to join the Great Law of Peace, but there were 2 more in the Peacemaker's sights.
Pick up where we left off.
And the Onondaga. Both were powerful nations, renowned in war.
Karen's going to watch this part.
Before the meeting began, he asked one of the warriors for an arrow from his quiver. Then he held up the arrow and snapped it. "See how easily this breaks?" he told them. Then he asked for a warrior from each of the 5 nations to give him an arrow. Bundling these 5 together, he bent them with all of his strength, but the 5 arrows together held firm. "When we are united," he explained, "we cannot be broken." Before they could begin the council, however, the Peacemaker insisted that all of them cast away their weapons and commit their minds to peace. He chose a white pine tree whose needles grew in bunches of 5. All the warriors uprooted the tree, buried their weapons under its roots, and then replanted it, and became lawmakers instead. An eagle came to perch on this new tree of peace, and the Peacemaker explained that it would watch over them and sound a warning if danger approached. Centuries later, men like Benjamin Franklin and George Washington would sit down with the descendants of the first Haudenosaunee Council to learn how they had governed themselves for so many generations.
And Sir John A. Macdonald in Canada
studied the Great Law of Peace, and later they adapted many of its principles into the U.S. Constitution. As a tribute,
and the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, which we're going to be learning about later,
did the eagle as their national symbol and placed a bundle of 13 arrows in its claws, 1 for each colony of the new United States of America. But that's a story for another time. Back to Hiawatha. Okay. The council began to draft... Okay, this is getting into government, so we're not going to watch any more of the video. But yeah, isn't that cool? How they made, how important this Tree of Peace was for the structure of the Iroquois Confederacy. So there we go. That is pretty much the lesson. Now, here is, what is going on? Why doesn't it let me do this? Okay. Oh, yeah, right. Okay. So here were the original nations, and then the Tuscarora, they joined later, and they were super glad to join the party. No more war, only peace. Woohoo! Okay, so this is your assignment for the weekend. Okay. So what occurred, actually, you know what? This is not going to be due until Monday because we're not going to do social studies on Sunday. Okay, so RA level is what occurred at the Tree of Peace. Okay, you can explain that. That's kind of the most important thing to be able to get. CA is what does the burying of the weapons under the Tree of Peace symbolize? Not really too tricky.
And then what other this is definitely more challenging. Not all of the answers for this were explained within the video. This is going to require additional research. Okay, there were some of them that they mentioned. They mentioned the eagle. They mentioned something else to do with like parts of the tree. And then what else? Yeah, like what else does there kind of like represent? What other symbolism could this whole tree show? There is information in your textbook about this, okay? So a cool way to do this could be like to point to it, like draw it, and then like zoom in on it. Okay, this shows this, this shows this, this shows this, if you're going to push it to the E level, but you don't have to if you don't want to. Okay, that is it. Great work. And we're going to pick social studies back up on Monday of next week, not on Sunday. Okay, let me know if you have questions. Again, posting it to the assignment that I create on Seesaw. Same deal, just take a picture and then send it to me. Okay, great work, 6A.